A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. Well, interestingly, Chamberlain, I woke up this morning and one of the first things that came to my mind is how we, and I mean we as a people, are handling, this whole COVID-19 thing. The talk is, just yesterday, I was, at church, speaking with a few friends, everyone wearing a mask, and every one of us was complaining how that every environment we got into, it was like you are the odd man out, the stranger, the only Martian, so to speak, wearing the mask and all of that. And it begs the question, do people really even see the enormity of the challenge that's on our hands right now? The balance is still there. The challenge of the balance is still there, lives and livelihood. Now, I said we, and I'm talking about all publics here. The government at the federal level, the government at the state level, local level, traditional, every one of us, and then the people who are being led ourselves, all the officers who are at the forefront of this battle, everyone of us. Then those of us who are being served these things and being given this counsel, how well we are even taking it all is one thing that's really giving a lot of people concern. Not to talk of the fact that government is still pushing ahead, trying whatever they can to do the needful as far as the COVID-19 vaccines is concerned. A good number of people still don't, they are still speaking at cross purposes about this thing. It begs a lot of questions, Chamberlain. Do we have a united front about fighting this thing? Are we even seeing the enormity of the challenge that is ahead of us? When people call this a war, I don't think we're even aware of what it means that we're at war. Maybe because we're not seeing guns. Maybe because, we're not seeing soldiers. People don't even know that this is a war indeed. But then there's the government challenge, there's the people's challenge. The people challenge is definitely one that is baffling, Chamberlain.
Well,
you don't even know where to begin, clearly.
It's going to be incredibly difficult to get everyone on the same page on this matter. It is, really, because it's... I don't know if we'll still call it novel coronavirus after all this while.
It's still novel. Don't forget, government, agencies of government specialists started telling us, the thing keeps evolving. You don't know what's next and all of that.
Yeah, true. At the same time, Lagos. You're talking about Lagos and how the governor is talking about how he wants to get vaccines. This is beyond, do we say, complement the efforts, or besides what and how the federal government is going about acquiring the vaccines. They said, we're going to get it from everywhere. But the AstraZeneca, the one from Pfizer, I think if it says everywhere, I think China, Sinoplex, all of those things will be included as well. So I don't know, the potency of some of those vaccines, they've compared all of them. Some talked about the ones in Brazil, how potent it is, how some of those vaccines may not address those ones because of the mutation. So,
if we're going to begin the conversation around the vaccines, Chamberlain, we have a huge, should I say, another battle on our hands as far as that is concerned. Yeah. Because on the one hand, it's securing the virus. Remember, we had that conversation with that specialist in the US who was saying, where are you going to get the vaccines from? So that's on the one hand. On the other hand...
But I thought they said the governors are talking about one arriving when? Is it end of this month or February?
Well, we've been hearing that. Perhaps you know what you often say, until we have it, we don't have it. So that's on the one hand. Okay, now, if and when that comes, how many people are we going to serve as a nation? We're 200 million strong people.
Well, Lagos is doing something. They want to get theirs.
So that's on the one hand. First tranche, I understand, is about 10 million. Who are the people that are going to be getting priority? That's on the one hand, the number of vaccines. Secondly, the acceptability by the people. It's always been contentious. Historically, that is one of the reasons we had a battle with the cholera, vaccine of many years ago, the yellow fever vaccine of, over the years, even the polio vaccine. It's always a difficult thing persuading people that they needed to get these shots and all of that. So add to the fact that it's not just one shot you're going to get. You're going to get at least twice. So the 10 million that is coming, is it going to be for 5 million people? I don't
Well,
know.
who knows? If depending on, that conversation came up as well, living in other climes where they thought, okay, did they modify the vaccine and ensure once you take one shot, it will be sufficient to a large extent. So who knows what happens? But some of the other issues that we should equally consider when we raise concerns about how COVID, how we respond or what's happening here, people are they go ahead and get a false positive COVID certification when they know that they've tested positive and they travel with it. Do we still require COVID certificates, or did we ever require COVID certificates to travel locally? I'm not sure we do. I know that in other climes they do. As long as you're going to board any flight, you have to show up. But that would be a job of work if we're going to do that, because it costs how much? 50, 70,000 naira to get it. And then people think, look, why should I every time I want to get that? So that's something else.
It's definitely going to do a lot. It's going to harm business.
And when other countries were restricting flights from UK, when that strain got there, what did we do? We didn't. So, and then Lagos says, look, every symptom of malaria, you should treat it as COVID.
And now that you talk about Lagos, in conversation you started earlier about Lagos securing its own vaccines, I guess Lagos is just pretty much taking the bull by the horn and saying, look, even if the federal government is having its challenges in dealing with these issues, we're going to have to do something to protect ourselves and protect everything that is ours. And that is quite ingenious. But then we need to also take seriously what the vice president said about what do we do locally to protect ourselves? But one other interesting issue about this whole COVID-19 thing is the personnel fighting it. And there was, I think Markwe has something to say about that. Markwe?
Gentlemen, good morning from Abuja here. Markwe Ogun Yusuf. I think you hit the nail on the head there. The personnel in the facility which we visited, our correspondent Gloria Omezioke paid a visit during the week towards the weekend to see what was happening in the isolation center. Recall that these isolation centers were set up when we heard that COVID was about to hit the country. Peradventure, it got into the country. This was where we're going to put those who were affected. The isolation centers in some states have been shut down from what we understand. Lagos, where you are, we understand that they're about to reopen some centers. But the one in Gwagwalada here is still open. But what is happening right now is that they are really, really short of manpower. They have, according to the report, according to what I was able to find out, just one doctor and 2 nurses to serve about 35 patients. And of course, that calls to question, whether the people who lose their lives now are losing their lives from COVID or whether they're losing it out of lack of attention or lack of care. These people, the personnel who are there, they're working themselves to the bone. But come to think about it, how much can a doctor and 2 nurses do without getting fatigued, tired, or making mistakes, as the case might be? How much attention can they really give to vulnerable people when you consider the fact that the cases that are taken there are moderate to severe cases? It means that your case must be very bad before you're admitted to that facility. So when you put that amount of pressure on them, what are the chances that you are not exposing them? Because in the process, they themselves could get infected. What are the chances that the patient too is also getting adequate care? So there are big questions to be asked as to, whether or not, one, we're putting our money where our mouth is, whether or not as a people we're not getting tired. I do know that, yes, a number of other private facilities have been commissioned to look after COVID cases. Even at the National Hospital, yes, they're looking after COVID cases, but this was a primary isolation center. And if we're seeing the numbers going up and we're seeing an increased number of deaths, it means that, some cases are presenting themselves to be more severe. What has been government's response in that regard? I think there are big questions to be asked, gentlemen.
Who knows? I guess we'll, keep at that and see. Because if you go into those who are the caregivers, look, that's a different ballgame entirely.
But don't forget, we in the same light, we also heard, it was you that highlighted it last week, that a good number of the isolation centers have been shut down.
Yep.
And if this is just one example, I wonder what's happening in several other states, especially at a time when the figures are said to be rising.
So there you go. Lots of questions about all of that, but yes, do what you can while you can. Don't look to your neighbor because they may not. You know what you say when you drive. That look, these days you don't drive for yourself. You drive for the next person, so that you be that careful. You never can tell. You may just have that going on here. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what the dailies and how they reflect what's happening. The Guardian, as a matter of fact, they start with something directly related to COVID. Why herbal medicines not certified to contain COVID-19? NAFDAC insists on clinical trials of products. Well, remember, you can't forget that, can you? When they talk about the low-hanging fruits in terms of what we need to do about this one.
And she still talks about it. And, at a separate interview, she said that the challenge here is the balance or the distance between the fact and realities of how these herbal medicines work and the data that may or may not support those claims.
Did we say what we're doing to mitigate that challenge or to bridge that gap?
You remember she put together a team of researchers, local herbalists, she calls them, and they are still working on that one. Not herbalists like that.
The herbalists, aren't they?
Herbalists are people who work with herbs, not babalawo.
Okay.
They're herbal medicine practitioners. Come on, Chamberlain.
What? You're the one saying it. I'm just listening in.
Yes. So be educated. It's not that.
Okay, the practitioners, huh?
Herbal medicine practitioners are herbalists.
HMP.
Herbs. Herbalists.
Okay, maybe the acronym HMP. Well, so you know that it's not the same thing. Okay, well. Oh boy. The African man, he just thinks there's something that it just comes to your mind when that comes up, doesn't it? Oh dear. And then look at this other one here. Investors count losses as restrictions, taxes slow breweries. Stakeholders blame COVID-19. Insecurity. Ask for tax reduction. Gloomy 2021 outlook. Jobs could be lost. Experts warn. Well, jobs have already been lost in several other areas. They've been crippled. But with this one, I guess it's something that will give us some sort of new thinking to see how we could address all of these things.
Nigerian News Direct leads with this one, and it's a story that is developing. Hopefully we'll get some new on that today. Presidency steps into Ondo Fulani herdsmen feud. That story is on page 6. Southwest Governors Mieti Allah Pale find out the details on the inside pages this morning. Of course, you can see there are so many stories to choose from, but I go with that one right under the page. Kaduna Abuja Road records 15 deaths within 72 hours.
Wow.
That's according to official. Again, that story is on page 6. There's a story that we took yesterday on our news that pointed at the fact that the government says that the Kaduna-Abuja highway is going to be ready by 2023. Perhaps that is why we are having this challenge. But then the details are on the inside pages. Page 13 also has this one. Nigeria's economic outlook in 2021 will be challenging. That's ascribed to analysts. You may want to take advantage of and read up on that. And right above the nameplate, Southwestern Security, OPC issues warning, backs Akeredolu, Igboho, dares northern leaders. As they say, the plot thickens. The story is on page 2. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct today. Marco?
Well, let's quickly look at the Abuja Inquirer for you. And you see there, after kidnap of 8 orphans, police beef up security in FCT. That's what they have on the front page for you. That is right there. After kidnap of 8 orphans, police beef up security in FCT. As Ondo quit order to herders expire, fresh moves to resolve impasse. You find details on page 3 of the paper. Nigerian slam Jega over Buhari, hailed at Garba. Yes, so you still have ripples from that parley that happened last week on restructuring. Page 3 is where you find details. A number of stories at the bottom there. FCTA raises alarm over fake COVID-19 inspectors. So beware. It looks like there are fake COVID-19 inspectors on the prowl on page 5 of the paper. COVID-19, FCT schools adopt shift system. And let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Oh dear, fake this, fake that. Goodness me. Well, look at Vanguard next. Tension as Ondo governor's 7-day ultimatum to herders expire. As presidency drives peace talks between Southwest governors, Mieti Allah. They have a host of riders now. Police or your government delegation visits Ibarapa to broker peace between Fulani and Igogma residents. Police vow to arrest culprits in violence, arson. Arrest 3 suspected herdsmen in Ogun. Why Ibarapa residents rejected Fulani herders? Sunday Igboho. Okay, so he's got a perspective here. Why I've been silent? Gani Adams, Agbekoya, OPC, back Akeredolu, Sunday Igboho won presidency, northern leaders. FG portraying self as defender of Fulani herders, says Falana. Help Akeredolu, other governors flush out criminal herders. Middle Belt Forum tells federal government. Rescind quit notice, compensate Fulani. AYCF tells Akeredolu. Aggrieved parties must bury the hatchet. ACF. So he goes, you've almost read the whole story with this kind of rider. So it gives you all the perspectives associated with that lead story, as a matter of fact. So that is the big one you find right there. Yes, they do have something about COVID. Unilag set for non-physical post-duty ME test. Well, to be forewarned, I guess, you know what to say, because look, times have changed. Things have equally changed. But so this post-duty ME test, how are they going to guard against somebody doing it from a remote area? Are they going to come to the premises of the school and then you space them all out? Do they have the facility and capacity to do that? I don't know. Who knows?
Well, in this day and age and with all these learning management systems we hear of, about time we actually put our money where our mouth is, don't you think?
Well, there you go. There's a lot on the back page as well, so you can check that out.
The Blueprint newspaper this morning is looking at pretty much the same angle to the story, only taking the same story from a completely different tangent. As Akeredolu's quit notice expires today, Mieti Allah members now live in fear, fleeing Oyo. That's according to Macban. More details on that on the inside pages. Ondo quit notice not in the nation's interests. Subscribe to Arewa Youth. Will secure Yoruba land at all costs. Arewa Nokakanfo. MBF backs Akeredolu. Please investigate Ibarapa arson. Murik cautions FG. Again, I said earlier, the plot thickens. The details are on the inside pages this morning. Pick up a copy of the paper for all of it. Right under the nameplate, privatization, Senate probes 50 billion naira mismanagement by NBET. Well, is this why you don't have power supply in your area? The story continues on page 6, among several others this morning. That's the Blueprint today.
Well, leadership is the next one here. Look at what's on the front page. Quit notice, Akeredolu refuses to shift ground as herders seek truce. Cattle breeders to meet Ondo or your governors today. Middle Belt Forum backs Ondo governor, says Igboho's arrest will heighten tension. Attacks on Fulani disturbing, say northern youths. ACF warns against reprisal attack. Saraki, Alawa Kala, others call for dialogue. All the details are on page 4 of the paper. Lawyers ask courts to stop governors from borrowing 17 trillion naira pension funds. That would definitely be an interesting case to watch. because my money, your money, and the monies of many other people who are working the 9 to 5, will be there. So we should be watching out for that particular case. Page 7 gives details. And looking just beneath the nameplate, federal government moves to stop 234 billion naira annual loss to Apapa Port gridlock. What are they going to do about it? You might want to read page 4 to see that. No foreign investor can make Ajaokuta steel work. That's according to Yusuf. It's not my Yusuf. And if you look at the bottom, 2023, stakeholders raise concerns over monitoring of election funding. You'll find details on page 2. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
I think it will be interesting to see how that matter goes when they want to borrow pension funds because, even when it hasn't been borrowed, you look at those queues of senior citizens, retirees, trying to get their pension. That doesn't look good.
For people who have left a former employment trying to access 25%, it's a lot more difficult.
Now they want to borrow it?
So,
politicians? If you were a businessman, if you were going into venture capital or risk funding, maybe because you want to create wealth.
I think government needs to be better advised because it looks like pension funds look like it's just dormant funds staying somewhere like unclaimed dividends and dormant accounts and all of that. That's the way it looks.
Borrowing everything.
So
you look at Daily Independent next. Current policy mix may push economy deeper into the red. Analysts say high inflation, overvalued official, exchange rates, monetary policy regulations unsustainable. Wow. There you go. And then, I think you should hear this. Stakeholders warn AMCON over collapsing Aero into new airline. So that's the plan about getting a new airline when you hear that they want to get a new airline. That's what's going on. Probably they're thinking about.
All right, Daily Trusts has this one very interesting. Take a look at it. Despite importation ban, foreign rice floods Nigerian markets.
Oh dear.
And of course, here is the writers tell you the implication. Fear grips processors. Growers want government intervention. Government already intervened, banned imported rice, so how come they're coming in?
No, but they can't just ban it and sit down, fold their arms across their legs.
Well, if you check the story, the pictures you see there, you see pictures of bags of foreign rice, but then that bigger one, the biggest of the pictures, it shows a consignment of smuggled rice seized by men of the Nigerian Customs Service.
How did they
in
get
Lagos.
in the first place? Why did you allow them to come in and then seize them when they're in there? Look. Are they creating a job for FOU or what? Well, what's all this?
And Customs tells you we've seized thousands of bags.
At the border or inside the market?
And the experts are saying Nemesis catching up with Millers. All of that story you'll find on page 5 of the paper this morning. And right under the nameplate, untold story of Amotekun herders clash in Oyo community. That story is on page 3. The strip under the pictures, quick notice. Southwest governors meet Miyetti Allah today. That story is on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
On YouTube, that as his lead headline, Governors Miyetti Allah parley over insecurity, quit notice. The question is, which branch of Miyetti Allah? Is it Macban, Kautahore, or Macban? Which one of them? Akeredolu hosts Southwest Governors, Herders leadership, MBF faults presidency, IGP on Drover's eviction, Gani Adams to ACF. Watch your utterances. Page 3 is where you find it. And you also see that on top of the nameplate, CRR breach, CBN levies lenders 316.5 billion naira. Act bars non-compliant banks from paying dividends. Wow. Page 8 is where it is. And then you also see there 15 killed, houses razed in NURTW members clash. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
All right, so Daily Times, Senate uncovers mismanaged 50 billion naira escrow funds. So there you go. What next, you may ask? So that's pretty much it. They've got the other headlines right there. So that is able to look at some of the headlines this morning. We will be back in a moment. Don't go away, but you could grab a cup of tea or coffee. We'll be right back. All right, so in the mix of all of these matters that are playing themselves out? Look, people are giving different suggestions in terms of what they think can solve all of these out, but let's get to here and see which way, what suggestions might fit the bill. Mark?
Indeed, Chamberlain, the event of the last couple of days here in Nigeria, if not weeks, it would seem that no matter how hard we try to run away from this topic, the events of the last couple of weeks and days have brought it back again into sharp relief. To join us to discuss this matter this morning is Professor Rufai Alkali, who is former special advisor to the President on Political Affairs and also former Pro-Chancellor and Chairman, Federal University of Technology, Mina. Prof, you're welcome to
Thank you very much, Mope. You're looking good.
Well, it's good to be back.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, we sincerely
hope... channels. Congrats, you have been doing a good job.
Thank you most kindly, sir. I don't even know whether to say. I already said Happy New Year, and I was just wondering, if this year has truly started on a happy note. No. First, we had the carryover of the coronavirus into the year. According to some people, they say it also made the crossover into the year. But then when you look at the matters, especially with security that have also crossed over into the new year, and the conversations we're beginning to get now on restructuring, there are huge questions as to whether or not this time around the conversation is for good. Do you think that we can make progress given just how often we're talking about this topic of restructuring?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that the debate on structuring of Nigeria is not a new one. It has been as old as the history of Nigeria itself. Indeed, I will venture to say that the history of Nigeria is the history of restructuring, because this is not the way Nigeria was in 1914 or in 1946 when the Richard Constitution was started, or in 1960 before the Republican Constitution, or in 1963 when the Republican Constitution was brought in, and after a series of changes. Now, the pattern is that the debate on restructuring has been shifting and been changing over a period of time. You may recall that before political independence, the argument that the nationalists wanted to have some regions to be created, and the option given to Nigerians then was two, either to accept independence and then you can create your state at your own convenience, or if a state is created or region is created, then it has to delay the independence. And then politicians at that time, our nationalists, they said, give us independence. And not long later, you may recall that the NPC, in alliance with the NCNC, created the Midwest region out of Southwest region. At that time, not everybody welcomed the idea because the three regions were very powerful and they wanted to run their affairs with relative strength vis-a-vis the federal government at that time. So any touch of any region was like a minus for the regions, and therefore it was seen as a minus. You may also recall that in 1966, after the coup that led to the killing of Prime Minister Abubakar Tafawa Balewa and other regional leaders, the military government then introduced a unitary government, which was away from the confederal system, sort of, that was being run before then. And many people welcome it, some did not welcome it. But those who did not welcome the unitary government are the people who felt very bitter because the concentration of power completing the federal government at that time was too much. And that's why when the second military coup took place in July 1966, one of the first things they did was to reverse that decree of unitary government to return Nigeria to a federal government again. Now, you may also recall that in 1967, just before the beginning of this civil war, the federal government again realized that the best way again is to restructure Nigeria into some states. And we ended up at that time having 12 states. So, some of the minority at that time, they were very, very happy because they were now being freed off from the control of the hegemonic control of the major ethnic groups, so to say. So, since then, more states were created, And then at one stage, it reached a point that the state creation was not an issue of ethnic or regional matter, no, but developmental issues.
So, Prof, I hate to cut short this history lesson because you say that this is, the history of Nigeria is a lesson or is a history of restructuring.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The question is, what lessons are we taking from it? We've had time now to experiment with all manners of things. I mean, we've done parliamentary system of government. We have broken down even, from the regions to more states. We've done unitary. We're back in the federal government or some sort of mix of federalism with unitary. That's where it seems we are. Are we learning any lessons? And, so far so good. It doesn't look like it's working because the agitations are still there. If there's anything, they're getting even louder. And the problems also seem to be increasing. Often and often again, we always hear Nigeria is teetering on the brink. We're, playing with fire, things of the sort. Everything centered around restructuring. Are we learning any lessons from from all that you've enumerated and where we're currently going?
I think let's take it this way. The first, Nigeria is a sophisticated country. And our old level of democracy, whether we see it as calculated in terms of 21 years since 1999 or much earlier since 1960s, the way we run our country is also more robust compared to other African countries. We are far, far ahead. And therefore, the level of conversation and debate on issues concerning Nigeria is often heated. Sometimes people see it for bad reason, but sometimes also for good reason, because out of this debate, more things keep on coming out, and the picture of a better Nigeria come out. I'm a more positive person. Now, but let me also consider that there are issues that could have been handled differently. Like I said, at some stage, the issue of state creation was a developmental matter. And that you could now, if you summarize the whole debate about restructure, it's about 10 items or so to say. Those who want state police, those who want more state created, those who want devolution of power from the federal government, those who want a I'm coming to that confederal system again, rather than the federal system. Then those who are looking for resource control. And those who want the 6 zones in the country now to be given more powers. There are people who are calling for the abolition of local government. Normally, in a democracy, these are issues for debate and discussions. The only thing is that even though Nigerians have faith in democracy, but we are having difficulty having faith in our National Assembly to handle this matter. Because technically speaking, once we have an elected government, it is the structures and institutions of that we have on the ground used to be used now to aggregate all these interests. And that if the National Assembly is given that opportunity, and they've been given opportunity, if you look at the Electoral Act and other matters related to that, it was the National Assembly that made all these decisions to restructure or to reorganize or reform the Electoral Act. And now we have an Electoral Act that we can say we are fairly comfortable. That's not the end of it, and that's not a perfect document, but we are moving forward. So, but there are people who think that you can have restructuring outside the National Assembly. That's why sometimes people call sovereign national conference or national conference. And some people have been calling for outright secession, that they can have secession without just on the table like that. So it is normal for people to agitate for certain things. It's normal for them to put pressure for those issues. But in a federal system like we have in Nigeria, nobody will have everything the way you want it.
Yeah, but you've talked about how, a lot of people are saying that this should happen outside the remit of what we currently outside the remit of the structure of government, so to speak, especially the National Assembly, which is a major bone of contention. The National Assembly continues to say this is within our purview. But for those who say it is outside the remit of the National Assembly, might not be doing so because of a lack of faith in the National Assembly. They say that this is outside the remit of the National Assembly. And we've seen examples of that, outside of the country where, referendums have been called for and people, adults of that country have been asked to go and vote on the matter to say that this is about deciding the fate of a country, or deciding the fate of a people. And everyone should have their say rather than saying they're delegating this to their representatives. What's your thoughts on that? How heavy is the importance, or how sacrosanct is the importance of a referendum, agreed upon by the generality of the populace in deciding the future of a country like Nigeria?
Yes. Again, we are going back to the same point. But if you now jettison the role of the National Assembly, and as some people are calling, and they make a lot of sense and argument that what you need is a representation of nationalities that will now sit down somewhere and debate on all the issues and come up with recommendations. Now, the idea is that how do you define a nationality? Is it the same thing as a tribe, or are they different? Are you dealing with all the tribes in Nigeria, or are you going to aggregate these tribes into different nationalities? Or are you saying that they're going to be represented by one person, by 10 people? Is it going to be on population, based on population? Is it going to be based on size of the land? What are you going to do? Who is going to coordinate this? In the past few years, several years, we had several series of constitutional conferences and national conferences. And that ultimately, whenever they finish, there are people who feel that, well, after the constitutional conference, then it should be just adapted. Even if you are going to do a referendum, you have to agree what are the issues that will be taken to referendum. Which are those issues? Are they all the issues or some parts of the issues? Now, what we are saying here is that you must have a structure, a legitimate structure, that is it, that will now provide the base and the platform and the framework for all these debate and arguments. There's no harm with all these arguments. There's no issue. Because there are people who feel that there should be state police. But there are people, and they believe very, very strongly. But some people are saying that, look, if you look at what the state governors, for example, are doing with the state independent electoral commissions, where every state governor will ensure that where is a local government election, he will sue the entire number of local government, even council, nobody will be giving. Whether you have 10 political parties, 20 political, nobody take anything. So by the time you give some state government, the police, they will control everything. But in any case, even now, with all sense of responsibility, I want to argue that every governor can work with a state commissioner, with director of SSS, with all other federal employees, whether they are a security or non-security agency. But the debate of whether you need a state police or not can continue. And if it is agreed that this country will need state police, so be it.
Prof, you said that there is no harm in having these conversations. For some people, they'll agree entirely with you that indeed the conversations are necessary and there is no harm in having them. However, another group of people are getting more agitated and are saying, look, we've been talking forever and ever, and it doesn't look like we're making much progress. It's time to take up arms. And we're beginning to see more and more extremist groups, coming up and saying, this is the way to go, especially when you consider the perceived injustices that continue to prevail, so to speak. Don't you think that we are under some sort of pressure now, some sort of hurry to say, moving away from talk, this is the action that we're taking towards correcting some of the ills that we're currently seeing in society? Otherwise, there is no way, there is no stopping the gathering of followers by these extremist groups.
Well, I agree with you totally, Mwape. There is a pattern in Nigerian politics that has been there for quite a long time. And again, I must say it's not new. It's what we call politics of brinkmanship. And it's very common under civilian governments. It happens usually under very military governments. Most of the forces that you see that are agitating, the smaller one, the one that you're talking about, coalitions together, trying to, raise dust and the rest of them, some of them, they have other people behind them. And that sometimes, as a political scientist, I would say that the ruling elite should have responsibility to Nigeria and to Nigerians. And they should also remember that if, like the argument that's been made by our leaders recently in the Trust Dialogue, is that even if you do the restructuring, that is not the end of the argument. Because ultimately, the other issue that not being discussed about on restructuring is what the ordinary citizen wants is that how can he have access to water in his village? How can he have access to basic health care? How can he take his children to school? How can he have security? How can he have a very good road to travel, bring his produce from the village to the market and then back to the village? How can you be able to have something that you can say you are now a worker, that you are having a living wage? How can you be sure that when you retire from service, you are going to have your own retirement benefit paid on time? People are talking about basic things, about daily life. But the ruling elites, most of the time, when they see the pressure on the people on them, they divert their attention, because ultimately, even if you do the restructuring, personally, we know most of us as political scientists, when we study in the 1970s and 80s, structural issues do not solve the systemic issues. The value in the system, the way the system operates as a whole is significantly more important than even the structures sometimes. So if people are addressing those, the very concern of the ordinary person, nobody will care whether you're running a religious system or you're running a federal government or you're running a confederal system. But when people are denied their right, they are oppressed, they are suppressed through various policies, directly or indirectly, openly or subliminally, then people begin to raise, and then they look for a reason to organize. So what we are saying here is that it is time for our ruling elite to realize that if we push our people, if you mobilize them and push them into a particular position, you cannot take them back. And that's why you end up finding people trying to arm themselves and fighting this. And everybody will be a loser in the process.
Let's quickly go to Lagos now. I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Yes, thank you, Mokwe. Prof, in the last comment you just made, you referred to the people in leadership as ruling elites. And it just raised a question on my mind. Do we have, and then you have talked about two other words, political structure and system. So what exactly is the issue? At the beginning, you took us through, historical trajectory of where we are coming from as a people, policies of the 60s, First Republic, and all of that. So what exactly would you say the issue is that's been intractable over the years? Because it would seem like the problems are pretty much the same over the years. Is it a leadership problem, a systems problem, or a structure problem? What exactly is the issue, and what do we need to do to resolve it?
I think it's a combination of all of the above. You see, the good thing about we Nigerians is that we are not comparing with ourselves with those behind us. And it's very good. We always move ahead, we think ahead, and we plan ahead, or we should plan ahead. So Nigerians are always looking at what is happening in other parts of the world. They see what is happening in Europe. They see what is happening in the United States. They see what is happening even in Asia, even in China and other places. So there's this agitation in our mind that, look, there are certain things Nigeria should have gone beyond at this point in time. So the question people always ask is why? So there are people who believe it is the issue of structure. Therefore, maybe by the time you restructure the country, then it is possible. But the history of restructuring, like I said, in Nigeria has always been contentious. And
Prof, if you don't mind me butting in, Prof, just one moment.
Should argue it.
Prof, just one moment. I asked that question against the background of how you started, about the way leadership in the First Republic played out. The kind of policies they initiated, people-centric policies that they came up with, some of which are still subjects of discussion in political science lectures today. And people have referenced, even in the report that we played ahead of this conversation, people are still referencing that First Republic, and maybe we should go back to the parliamentary system. So that's why I was asking, that conversation is still on, whether or not, perhaps the referendum that Marquez referenced might also, refer to that. But what exactly do we have a political structure? Because some would say, while we are talking about a presidential system of government, we don't seem to be practicing it to the letter.
That's a good one also. I think even Mope raised it in the introductory comments she made. There was an opportunity I had here in this same station, and I discussed the issue of parliamentary system. And I want to take a minute to explain this point again, because people tend to forget what we have done in the past or what we have said in the past. Sir, Africans do not want to share power. That's the reality of life. Therefore, not only at the federal level or at the state level or at the local government, even at the level of organization, wherever you have an executive authority and a ceremonial authority, they always clash. It is always happening like that. Now, when we inherited the parliamentary system, we inherited it from Britain. In the first 3 years, from 96 to 63, the Queen was the head of state. And then Tafawa Balewa was the prime minister. But once we had the Republican Constitution, when Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who is a highly respected nationalist, who is, highly, conscious of his responsibility, like all others, like Awolowo and Sardauna and others who are conscious about the future of our country. He was the president of the country. But after that, we had started having clashes between the president and the prime minister. So what we are saying here is that the only countries that have relative stability who are running parliamentary system are those who we call the Commonwealth countries. Maybe Canada, maybe Australia, maybe New Zealand, and England itself. Because the Queen is their head of state, and she is at the background. And then the Prime Minister is the one who runs the government. And the Prime Minister must be elected. He is not elected nationwide. He's elected, so was elected among his own peers. That's why he's called Prime Minister, Primus inter pares. That is first among equals. Now, what you have is that in the country where you have this kind of system, where it's not the Queen that is the head of state, you have always political instability. If you look at what is happening in Israel, there was a time now, even now, Israel is in the state of limbo. They have to share power through so many arrangements, so many technical issues between the opposition and the ruling party, so to say. So what we are saying that in a typical African country, when you have somebody as a ceremonial president and then a prime minister, it will not work. Because the rule also is that when the prime minister must be always in the National Assembly or in the Congress to be defending every policy decision. So, and then wherever there is a lack of a majority from the National Assembly, he will have to dissolve the National Assembly or he will have to resign. And so, Prof, where tribal issues, ethnic issues, religious, it will come in.
Let me just add this so you can respond to them as well. Now, if premised on what you've said, good morning. If premised on what you said that, Africans don't like to share power, would you be suggesting then that we modify our democratic process? Because if we're to do that, how come in the 60s things appeared different than now? Isn't it about the people themselves?
No, even then there were problems because, like I said, after the 1964 election, if you may recall, there were difficulty by some forces to allow to invite the Prime Minister to form government. And it may look small, but it can be very big. If you look at the contention now in the United States, after running a democratic government for over 250 years, if it were a prime minister system now, they would not, up to now, would not have sorted out the trouble. So what we are saying here is that wherever you have a parliamentary system, insofar as a Commonwealth system where the Queen is outside, or if you are able to get somebody, a Nigerian, who will be willing to play the role of a president, that will become different. But let us also look at what has been happening in two countries, Turkey and Russia. You find that the same person will be a prime minister today. After a while, he will change the constitution and become the president tomorrow. After a while, he will change the constitution to become a prime minister today. These are two cases where they are running between parliamentary system and then presidential system. Turkey and Russia, because they are very strong, they'll be able to suppress all the internal forces. But if you know what happened in Turkey in the past few years, it was very violent before the country was stabilized.
I'm wondering, though, looking at the crisis we seem to be in right now, do you think that restructuring has any role to play? Or you look at the security issues which we are battling with today?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to deny the fact that Nigeria is under serious strain. But it is our choice to say it is crisis. But if something that's been there with us for the past 20, 30 years, 40 years, as far as the issue of structural government, you cannot call it a crisis. Maybe it's a crisis of perception, maybe a crisis of attitude, maybe a crisis of interest. But the system has a way of balancing interests. And for example, what I'm saying is that even if you want to do restructuring, you have to do it through reconciliation, accommodation, and everybody will have his own interest accommodated. But if somebody insists that I want it this way and this way alone, in a federal system, it will not work. So
I'm sorry to
maybe I did not
interrupt
get you.
Right. We have to go on break here. So
okay,
when we come back,
we
will definitely let you finish your thoughts, Prof.
Sure.
Please stay with us. Professor Rufai Alkali, former special advisor to the President on Political Affairs and former Pro-Chancellor and Chairman, Federal University of Technology, Minna, is still with us in our Abuja studios, and we're talking about restructuring. Prof, you're giving us your closing thoughts on the matter, especially with regards to the current security situation. And you seem not to be so alarmed. You seem to be almost used to it. I think you think it's some brinksmanship. Is that really what it is?
It is. Because there are certain things that ought to have been allowed to work easily, but they are not being allowed. Even if you look at it, there are some states who are saying they are talking about a state police. I talked about it before. And they're agitating. Some of them may be even the people in power that are agitating for this state police. But now when there is effort, or their effort, to liberate the houses of assembly, to give them direct access to their money, and local government, they blocked it. And then some are even calling for the abolition of local governments. The creation of local governments has brought government much closer to the people. But depending on individual states, but generally, one can say that most local governments have collapsed. So you find that the small thing that the local government used to do, knowing the security situation in the local government, knowing how to mobilize funds for the state, knowing how to manage traditional issues, land issues, everything has been concentrated. And I think why most Nigerians are worried, and I think it's justified, is that gradually more power and more authority is being concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. And that instead of diffusion, where people will be involved, there is concentration and non-inclusion. And that, Aristos once said that if an able statesman out of job is like a huge whale, he will endeavor to overthrow the ship of state unless he given an empty cast to play with. If you look at the political tribe that has been created since 1999 or 1998, how many governors, how many National Assembly members, how many senators, how many ministers, how many ambassadors, most of them, no government can accommodate them. And some of them have role to play at the local government level, or at the state level, or at the international level. But if everybody is now constrained to sit down and be watching TV and counting his days, people will feel agitated. So lack of involvement of people who know the system, who understand the system, who are capable of assisting the system, both for development issues, both for security issues, makes people more angry, and they come up with all kinds of ideas and the rest of it. So I think we have to defreeze the environment. The tension is built because there is a lot of this sense of people feel that they are outside the system. When they
defreeze the environment, how?
Well, I am saying that, how do I put it? Well, I'm saying that when you concentrate power and authority in fewer and fewer hands, let's say, for example,
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
The question is, how do we do it?
No, I want to give
very quickly.
I want to give you an example.
Because we're almost out of time.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have the National Council of State. Occasionally, they have a role to play advising Mr. President on doing certain things. We have 36 states in the country, plus Abuja. In all these states, we also had former governors, former commissioners of police, former chief judges, former directors of SSS. If you can even invite them, some of them, occasionally, maybe within a system, to be advising government in those states where they served, whether they are indigenous of this state or they are not indigenous who are there, they will be able to advise government at a less cost what they themselves saw when they were there in those positions and what is happening now. And then with the benefit of this information, you can also do certain things for yourself. So what I'm saying that there are so many people who know a lot about the country, but if you don't invite them to assist you, they will keep quiet even if they see certain things going wrong. So what I'm saying, the concentration of authority, concentration of power is why now. And I think Professor Jega also mentioned the issue of this devolution of authority from the federal government. You see, the trouble again is how to balance. Do we want strong regions or strong federal government? Everyone has its own pluses, has its own minuses. During the 1960s, which we celebrate often, is that when the regions were very powerful, some of them even take foreign policy decisions without notifying the federal government. And then sometimes what you call the centrifugal forces were very powerful because the regions were in charge of their resources. And there are people who will support this. I personally will support that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with resource control. After all, everybody has the resources to utilize for the benefit of some people. If we are talking about resource control for the benefit of the people, not for the benefit of the elite alone. So I think we have to look at what are those functions of the federal government that can be performed by the state government. They should be taken back to the state government. so that the state government also will be able to also carry the local government along with them. Because you cannot insist the federal government give you more powers and then you also take away the power from the federal government and take powers from by local governments. Especially the finances of local government should be taken to the local governments. I believe in this one because it will be part of the defreezing of the environment. Councillor has nothing to do now. Chairman of local government has nothing to do. And so people are just floating around. And then we are now saying that we have problems and we have solutions to the problem. We don't want to pursue the solutions.
Well, let's hope that it will be more than talk, Prof. I sincerely hope that, some of the challenges that we're facing, we get to work and see how we can handle them. But we have to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Professor Rufai Al-Kali is former special advisor to the President on Political Affairs and former Pro-Chancellor and Chairman, Federal University of Technology, MENA. And he's speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. It's back now to you, Chamberlain.
All right, thank you, Mark. Well, turning attention to security-related matter, everyone knows about that scenario in Oyo as well as Ondo. But we'll start off with that of Oyo. And today we've got Mr. Fatai Owosheni, who is the Special Advisor on Security Matters to the Governor of Oyo State and also former Commissioner of Police for Lagos and Benue States. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, we've seen that there's so much happening at the moment about that scenario playing out in Oyo State. You have also been visiting some of those communities and some of the areas and people involved. Could you tell us what is the latest scenario now about the matter between farmers, herders, and the youths in Oyo State?
Thank you very much. Agreed, so much happening on the social media, while lesser things are happening on the ground. What is the relationship between the farmers and herders? They have been trying to manage themselves with a view to be able to do their business without either molesting the other. And you've also mentioned that we went to some of those areas. It's not the first time that we go there. People are going about their businesses in most of the places, even in Igaga, where it was the theater of the whole exercise. The people are ready to move on. The people are ready to forge on and be able to do lawful endeavors without any fear or threat of a war coming up. And that's the situation here.
Okay, so tell us, because if you say so much going on social media and a lot less in the real world, in parentheses, why then did that video circulate? I mean, what informed that decision of Mr. Sunday Adeyemo issuing the threat?
I don't think I want to be discussing that. That is past. We have to move on. We have to learn our lessons. I listened to Professor Ali Kali that has just spoken. We don't probably know and envisage what would be the resultant effect of what we're asking of. Professor Kali had said it, and I know that my governor here, the executive governor of Oyo State, Governor Sheyi Makinde, had said it, that we need to, close the gaps between the people that are being governed and the government, between the people and the institutions that are set up to protect them, that are supposed to render certain obligations. It's just about the gap. The gap somehow, for certain reasons, which are systemic, seems to be widening. And for us in Nigeria, and of course, Oyo State is not the only state, the HENSAS also widen the gap further. What are the institutions not doing to carry the people along? If I have a family member that has been kidnapped and I don't get a feedback to say that, oh, yes, this is what we've done in respect of your case. This is how the case is going on within the judiciary and whatever. Yeah, the person will get disillusioned, the person will get disappointed. We were in Nigogo where a lot of people came out to say, look, we seem to be lacking confidence in the institution that's supposed to protect us. And why do they lack confidence? Because you also have some elected officials and some people in that area who are, distant from the people. I can say it as a matter of record that a lot of people have been saying, no, things have been happening. Government has not been involved. The police has not been involved. They don't even know that for some of the kidnapping cases that took place, that there were suspects that are arrested. That was why the list of the 51 suspects that were connected, I mean actively connected, that the victims have come to identify. But if you have an institution that is not telling them, this is the progress of your case, they will think that they've been abandoned. We've been having discussion with the people in the area. Some of the issues that came out yesterday, I want to tell you that I personally, that have been involved in what is happening there, having meetings with the local government chairman and some of the victims, I've not heard of that before. That someone just constitutes himself to a lord in that area. So many allegations were leveled against that particular individual that they called Seriki. Oh, that for the past 5, 6, 7 years, he has been committing these atrocities, he's been doing this, he's been the one that is the vessel through which monies are paid to kidnappers and all those things. Some of them, conspiracy of silence, and all these things are coming out now. So we have to move on. We should leave what has happened. What we do from what happened yesterday, day before yesterday, is to learn lesson and see how we can move on and make sure that the people the institutions are obliged to are given the the benefit, the full benefit of the tax that they pay to make the institutions survive.
The thing about moving on is that it depends at least somewhat on those other people who are affected there. If they don't get closure, I wonder how they will move on. But then from what you said, it suggests that it comes across as though, one, you're saying that the police authorities have not been handling all of those cases of kidnappings or security challenges there properly, because if they have been, this will not have gotten to this level. Is that part of what you're saying?
They've not been able to celebrate their success. I would start from the case of the kidnapping that led to the death of that young man who went with a friend to the farm. People were arrested who also confessed to say that, oh, this person that is working for this person had asked us to come and do this. A chairman of one of the LCDA was kidnapped. People were arrested. In some of the cases, part of the so-called ransom was recovered. But the institution must know how to celebrate their success. And again, are people somehow are not patient, because when some of those things do happen and you want to go there, I don't want to lay emphasis much on the answers, which has changed a lot of things. That when people even go to respond to threats and whatever, the next thing is that they start throwing stones at them. It is not as if they want to do that. It's because they lack confidence. So we must build a kind of, look for a way to restore confidence back in our people, and not for people to make reckless comments. Both ways. People are saying Sunday Igboho has said this, which ought not to have been said. And you have some people that are being paid with public fund also responding on behalf of a socio-cultural group. Is that reasonable? Is that responsible at all? So all of us must guide what we say. If we continue to drum, the beat of war, if we are talking of war, you know where war will start and you don't know where it will end. For some of them, they've not seen it before. Some of us have seen it before. We've been out of this country to see where wars had been fought. If you think that if it happens, oh, you will escape, you have where to run to, it may not be so. So that is why we should be responsible in the comments and the narrations and what we throw out in the social media. Even yesterday that we went to Igangan, I've read things on certain platforms that said, oh, government and the commissioner of police went to visit Igangan, and Sunday Igboho came there to come and address the youth, to come and tell them that he has met with the commissioner of police and deputies, which did not happen, for God's sake. And before you know it, thousands of people will comment on that to say, oh, even Sunday Igboho had the effrontery to go and meet the commissioner of police there and confront her and do her parallel talking to the people. Why should we do this? We should just know that you know the beginning of war, you won't know the end. For some of the people, and who are the people I'm talking of? The people of Southwest. Do we remain the wild, wild West? People that will sit down in the comfort of their homes and be throwing things. Can they remember the First Republic? Everything started in Ibadan here. Fire on the mountain, cross-carpeting and whatever. And that's probably one of the things that had made Nigeria to be what it is today. So we should be responsible in our comments and not just fanning the ember of disunity. Religion is not a problem in the country. Ethnicity is not a problem in the country. But elites who, for their selfish reasons, are benefiting from all this. We shouldn't be using our fault lines to do narration on all the things we do. We should be sincere. And for our people as well, who put those people in the some of the institutions or governments that to the Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic or the other is holding it in themselves, know that these people are holding whatever position in their trust. That is what all of us, the media, the civil society group, let us see how we can educate, enlighten our people. The power they have under the Constitution. They may say the Chapter 2 is not justiciable, but we can enlighten our people to know that they have the superior power over anyone in authority. If we don't start doing that, we must be enlightening our people. That is what will solve the problem. It's not about whether a Yoruba man is a president, Igbo man or Hausa man is a president. What does that person make use of the power that has been given to him? What do the people do with the authority they have to challenge and to say that you are holding this authority and power in trust for us, and we can as well, take it from you. That is where we should start from. Professor Akali had talked about restructuring. We should be talking of devolution of powers and all these narratives and lamentations we are making. We should be thinking of how
Mr. Osheni, all those things that you have said are quite taken and, very, very valid indeed. And they would sound more, especially your latter views, sound more like something a little more futuristic. But here in the clear and present are the challenges that a good number of people have in the domain that you visited. Now, you've talked, about Igangan, but then there is also, I'm sure you're aware, maybe there is, a number of people may also mix it up, is that of Ibarakwa in the Okeogun area, where, this fellow that you just mentioned has, made some statements and done some things and visited the Seriki that you also referenced earlier and all of that. So in tackling this issue, and you say we should move on, if you look at it, you would find that over the past 3 months or thereabout, there have been repeated cases of these, and people are reported to have said that, look, we have expected government to intervene. We have gone to the police. We didn't hear anything for weeks. Now, talking about moving on and the efforts that are being made by government now, how come those things happened for several weeks? People reported to the police, mentioned the culprits, pointed to areas where these people emanated from, and nothing happened at that time. If we are going to move on, and people already have little or no confidence in the authorities, what's the assurance we have that what's happening in Okeogun and the Igangan area where you visited today will not replicate or is not already happening in other areas that we are not aware of?
Thank you. A little bit, let me first correct you. Ibarakwa is not in Okeogun. Ibarakwa is Ibarakwa. Okeogun is Okeogun. And I must also say this as well. That is why I said the institutions, especially the police, they shouldn't chicken out. They should be able to celebrate their success. You have said that things have been happening for the past 3 weeks. And of course, what has been said is nothing has happened. And I'm telling you, because of what I do, we follow up with things that happened there. I have mentioned to you that those kidnap cases that took place, suspects, I mean real principal suspects were arrested, which some of the victims have come to identify. It does not stop in arresting. It's also about taking the process through to logical conclusion. How much of efforts have been made to take them to logical conclusion? Somehow you see a lull, somehow you see progress, but is the institution speaking out? In some cases, when they even parade suspect, it ends at suspect being paraded. And I want to challenge the media as well. You also have that responsibility under the Constitution for oversight. You should follow up those cases. You should be able to ask, why has this case not gone to court? What is delaying it in court? I've mentioned one instant case of that lady. Even the recent case of Mr. Gbola, who after ransom has been collected, he was killed. They have suspects there. And all these people are there. We've said it. There is nothing to hide about it. It is a clear evidence that out of about 51 suspects that have been arrested, 85 to 90% belong to one ethnic group. That is to say that they are not being sacrificed. Are there things that some of us are hiding as well? I mean, some of the people in that area, because you have conspiracy of silence in most cases because they will say they don't have confidence. That is what I'm saying. It's not as if nothing hasn't been done. As Eddie was closed about 3 weeks ago, you can go and verify that. I was in a meeting with the local government caretaker chairman from that axis of Ibarapa and Okeogun. Certain things were agreed to. And in starting the things, Amotekun went to that area in conjunction with some of the non-state actors to go and do some work. It's the same people that came to say that, they are doing this, including the so-called Seriki. They've said Seriki Fulani of Oyo State. There are some other Serikis that are coming up. And who are the people installing them? The same people that are complaining. And the guy also, felt that he was doing himself well when the good ones went into where the criminals are hibernating and they were trying to do a clearance operation. He was the one that came out to say that, look, they are trying to get Fulani people out of that place because he wasn't involved. They involved the good ones. Weighty allegations have been made against him. And I can tell you, it was yesterday that I got to do some of this. We've been having interactions. I personally have had interactions to share my experience. I'm no more in the police. We share experience. We advise the people that work. The governor provides the wherewithal. So it is for people to carry out the operation, and they've been doing it. So today we would say, we've reported threats. People have come. We would say they're not doing it well. Then the thing comes back. So what we're saying now is that we are advising and helping the institution, especially the police and other security agencies, that they need to rejig their efforts. They need to, bridge the confidence gap. And I believe that when they do that, even the former commissioner of police, I know when Mr. Shina Olukolu was there, he did a tour of that place. The immediate past commissioner of police went to that area to see what we can do. When it comes to security, It's the work
Mr.
of
Oshani,
everyone.
I'm sorry I have to interrupt you. Let me bring you up. Let me take you up on two questions. You've talked about how the security agencies need to celebrate their wins more. That would also, according to you, bring the people closer to government or know what it is that is happening at the level of government. Someone will ask, what gap was Amotekun created to fill? Shouldn't Amotekun have been able to fill that particular gap? That if suspects have been arrested in certain situations, the local Amotekun, which is closer to the people, have been drawn from amongst the people, will be able to say this is the progress made in this circumstance. That's one. The second was that there was a statewide broadcast last week by the governor of Oyo State, which seemed to have gotten wind that things were about to get out of hand in certain areas. It would seem that that statewide broadcast did not have the desired effect. Apart from the speech that was made, what other steps were taken to ensure that violence was not visited on certain homes in the manner that we saw happened in the state over the week, last week towards the weekend?
Thank you, Maupe. Let me first correct one impression. Amotekun is not the institution that is responsible for giving a feedback to the people. It's created to fill a void, which they've been trying to do. And you've also seen how the same are people who were enthusiastic when Amotekun was to be created, who later came demonizing them after they must have given intelligence report. What do I mean by the police as an institution not celebrating its success? If you've arrested people, have they been, arraigned in court? If you've arraigned them in court and you're having challenges, because the criminal justice administration has so many legs, it starts from the police arresting, you go to the court and all those things. Have you come out to say, this is this? How much of effort have you made to, let the family members know that this is the progress of the investigation. This is how we are. These are the ones that we've not been able to prosecute. How much effort have you made to bring even some of the victims on board? In some of the cases, you even have the victims after arrests have been made and they've gone there to say, oh, yes, this is the person that actually did this. Come and make statements. Some shy away. So we have a lot to do in educating people on how to follow up cases. You've also made mention of the statement made by His Excellency, the governor of your state.
Before you answer the second question, I'm going to ask you to please hold your thoughts. We'll take a break and then you'll answer it when we come back from the break. Please stay with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Fatai Owosheni is still with us in the studio, and he was just about to, he's with us on Zoom in Ibadan. And he was just about to answer the second part of a question which we posed just before we went on break, which is about the governor getting a wind or getting intelligence that something untoward was about to happen, hence the reason for the statewide broadcast. But it would seem that it did not have the desired effect. Do you want to quickly explain what transpired there?
Yes, I want to tell you that it has a desired effect. That is why I say so many things are happening on the social media. We have friends, we have families that are not here in your state. We have those ones that are not in Nigeria. And questions are asked, even yesterday, while we were on that trip. Where are you? Be careful. Are people even out in Ibadan doing their business? Come to your state. People are going about their business. From Igogon to Igono to, of course, the Rua, Otu, Aguare, Tede. We went to all those places and people are really going about their businesses. People don't want to be fooled by anybody, fanning the embers of disunity. Because the impression that has been created on the social media is that you cannot even transact any business in your state. We need to be very careful. Someone had come on the social media, that female that said, I want to warn people, if they're in your state on a Friday or so, one incoherent thing like this, nobody should come out because they've said they will do this, they said they will do that. So what I'm saying is that the speech and the statement made by His Excellency has its desired effect for people to go about their lawful business. In that case, in Igangan, we need to move on with regards to that. And that is why from professional experience, everyone saw what we did in Lagos. It was at the thick of the farmers' headman's crisis in Benue State that I went there and have seen all these things. It's not just starting. We've been on this since the colonial era. I think the deliberate effort which the government needs to start is that we've talked and talked. So many panels have been set up with regards to farmers and herdsmen crisis. What can we do? Some other countries do have farmers. They have people that are also pastoralists. Why are they not having the problem? So many solutions, recommendations have been made. No one is working on them. We keep on meeting. We keep on convening a security summit. I think it goes back to the people, yourself, myself, all of us. Let us take people into account as part the provisions of Chapter 2 of of our Constitution. It seems as if we are laid back. We shouldn't continue that way. Everyone that has the means, the civil society group, the media, how much of enlightenment should we do? So, in effect, I can say emphatically that the statement of the governor of Oyo State has its desired impact. Other areas that we went to today and Daguare, and I'm surprised that some people are putting it on the social media that today and Daguare are having a religious war or something like that. Meanwhile, what has happened in the place is about market positions and not that two communities who are supposed to be families are fighting each other.
As we wind down on this one, when you say that no one seems to be working on some of these things to bring about solutions, you talked about the police, the individual, I think the Seriki there who you said has been indicted, what has the police done? So could you then tell us what measures have been put in place to ensure that these things don't get to this extent again, that if any such kidnapping or any such thing happens, there are bodies or groups in place to address those matters so that people have confidence that the authorities can address it, and as such, no one should be encouraged to take laws into their hands?
One of the things is what has happened yesterday. Is a brand new commissioner of police in the state. They have a brand new, some set of deputy commissioners that are new. They have listened to the people. They have seen the gaps. They probably will learn from this. Yes, they are new, but they should quick. Like the governor told the commissioner, your job is cut out for you. So see how you can change things. See how you can bring the institution more closer to the people. See what you can do for people to have confidence in you. We don't have to be comparison to compare one administration. That is one leadership with the other. So everyone, all of us are listening, and I think it's even a right, a step that is quickly taken, that the commissioner of police just spending 1 week or felt that I should go and listen. And a whole lot of things were said out yesterday that I think that the new commissioner of police and our lieutenants will work on. So the more we bridge the gap, the confidence in people, the
especially
police wasn't like this.
Especially that prosecution part, those who have committed anything, you talked about how many have been taken to court.
And when it comes to when it comes to prosecution, I'm aware that some are in court. But if the police is having challenge, police is not the one that decide on cases. That is also what people don't know. You have the judiciary, including our Nigerian Bar Association. I think the process of justice is too long in this country. We should find a way of shortening it so that people will quickly see that justice is quickly dispensed.
All right, Mr. Fatah Owosheni, essay to the governor on security matters, as well as the former commissioner of police for Lagos and Benue States. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Markwe?
I told you your name.
Sorry?
Well, we're moving to other matters right now. Just when you move from one issue to another issue to another issue, all of them contending for attention, and you say, which one do we deal with first? But hey, education is very important. Only recently we heard that ASU, called off their strike. They're set to resume. They're supposed to resume on the 18th of January. We don't know how far that has now worked, considering the fact that another set of unions within the university system, raised concern over how, certain monies that were supposed to have been disbursed to the different bodies within the university system was now being disbursed. We saw a protest protest marches across different tertiary institutions across the country to draw attention to this. We do not know how much of attention that was able to draw to the problems. We have with us in the studio Mohammed Ibrahim, who is the national president of the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, with us in the studio to give us an update, as we understand that now you're about to go on strike as a result of no attention being given to that protest. Was that what happened?
Well, thanks for having me. We are not about to go on strike, but we have given notice for going on strike if nothing is done by the 5th of February.
Isn't that the same thing? About to go on strike, it means you're about to go.
Because we believe that government will listen, and we also believe that something will be done.
But have they listened so far? You had the protest marches for a few days across Nigerian universities. Didn't that draw their attention?
Well, maybe not enough, because we have not been asked to, discuss with government, or we have not sent anything to convince us that government has listened or they are ready to do, the needful. So that gave birth to the resolutions that came from different branches across Nigeria, because this is something that has to do with the feelings and the welfare and well-being of our members across Nigerian universities. Members.
So what informs your optimism then? If they did not listen to something that was broadcast on television, in radio stations, marches across Nigerian universities, knowing that even though, yes, ASU has now been mobilized to go back to school, if these people are not, carried along, there is no way ASU can work. What do you think is going to spur them to action this time around?
Well, we still give the benefit of the doubt to the government. I don't want to be one of those who, concurs with the fact that the government is running a bit slow. But obviously, you cannot run away from saying it, because, like you said, that this has been in the media, it's in the full glare. And the last time I was here, I told you that we have given this to the court of public opinion, and that we thought government feels the pulse of the people. And obviously, this has not been done. So we believe that after the first stage of the protest, we have conclusively arranged that if by the midnight of 5th of February, government does not do the needful, of course, we have the mandate of our members, and we have written government that we will down tools.
By the 5th of February?
Yeah.
Well, again, I think that the issues that, are contending for attention needs to be brought to the fore. A number of them, if I can enumerate them here, they look like things that are commonplace. For instance, the retirement benefits of some of your members who have left service. Why is that an issue? Shouldn't that be taken for granted by now?
Honestly, this is $1 million question, because one cannot but feel so bad to talk about it, because if you are in the know, the pension scheme provides that public servants give out a certain percentages of their salaries to PENCOM, where such monies are handled by the PFAs. Mm-hmm. Now, government is supposed to bring a certain percentage, but from what we have seen so far, the whole thing is modeled up. Government is not living up to expectation. We have also found out that government is not remitting such funds that were supposed to have been removed from the salaries of our members. And that makes it very difficult for members who retire to access such funds when they retire.
That's alarming.
It's
even
alarming.
For those in service.
Yeah. So this gives a lot of concern. And that you could see that so many of our members are languishing after retirement. You know, when you must have given your money, it's your money, and then at the end of the day, you cannot access it. It becomes a problem. 6 months, 7 months, 1 year, 2 years after retirement, you're still traveling between the office of the PFA and the PENCOM, where you need to do a lot of screening, a lot of going up and down, and some of them die, some of them get struck, get a lot of issues. So these are things that are not highlighted, that our strike or our concerns or our grievances is not basically about allowances that are being mentioned, but more to that is that any public servant or any worker anywhere will want to have a peaceful life after, the working life. You want to have a restful life, you want to impact on your family and then enjoy the rest of your life. But when government cannot be trusted because of obvious, gaps that are there, that are avoidable, then it becomes a problem.
You're looking at a number of other things which you are talking about: inconsistencies in IP's payment, non-payment of earned allowances, non-payment of arrears of national minimum wage, delay in renegotiation of FGN, NASU and SANU 2009 agreements, teaching staff usurping headship of non-teaching units in clear violation of conditions of service and establishment procedures, neglect and poor funding of state universities, and non-constitution of visitation panels for universities. Now, some will wonder, though, some of this are outside the purview of the federal government. Take, for instance, neglect and poor funding of state universities. What do you think that the federal government, assuming you have the negotiation with them at that level, will be able to do about, say, funding in state universities?
Well, it's not totally out of the purview of federal government because universities are regulated by the National Universities Commission in Nigeria, and it's a federal government, parastatal, and the licenses are also given by, that body, and therefore, whatever that is approved for universities at the federal level, it only follows that the system, trickles down to the state universities. Universities are universal. The operations are similar. Even those at the private sector get their licenses from government. Now, part of the issues we have with the state governments is that most of the state governments or state governors do create or establish universities for political reasons, not because they really need them. You would see that almost every state in Nigeria today has a university or two, or most of them. Now, where you have not funded one properly, you are still going to create others or establish others. Where you have not put in place infrastructure, where you have not put in place professionals, and academics that should run the system and operate these universities to, dispense and give out education to our young teeming youths, you are still, gearing to, establish more universities. The situation in the state university is so pathetic because I can tell you that there are so many state universities whose workers have not received salary in the last 6-7 months.
So what do you want the federal government to do about that?
What we are saying is that there should be enforcement. We should not only be backing, but NUC should bite. Universities are regulated by laws. There are councils of such universities. The governors are the visitors of the universities. And therefore, if you do not have the wherewithal to operate a university, you close down. But you cannot bring in people's destiny and put them there, and then you give out, and people will be complaining about half-baked graduates. It is not expected that because you graduate from a state university, or you should be seen or be looked at as a lesser mortal. Universities are supposed to be of the same pedestal.
But looking at some of the other complaints, though, I mean, sadly, these are some of the things that we're saying. People will say that the biggest item of contention right now is IPIS, which battle it would seem that ASU has fought and won. They have asked for an autonomous system of payments for universities. Wouldn't that already solve the problem of IPIS, which you're also raising here?
You see, the story of IPIS is something that should have been a good development for Nigeria, because here you have a government who came on the mantra of fighting corruption, and that it is obvious that there are a lot of corruption taking place in our public service, universities inclusive, and that personnel costs are bloated and so on. So we as a union believed that with this idea of coming together, having a seamless, payment of salaries across Nigeria for federal universities would have been the best thing that would happen. But, when the issue came up, the unions met and said that, look, the operations of the universities are not the same with the public service, the civil service in the ministries, departments, and other agencies. There are peculiarities. In the universities, for example, you have issues such as sabbatical leave, you have visiting, lecturers, you have allowances that are not common, that are not found in other ministries and parastatals. And therefore, looking at the template or the IPIS program, you realize that all such things are not there. And that also, members of staff in the university system do not retire at the age of 60 or after 35 years of service. But the IPIS platform knocks you out once you are 60. So those are the peculiarities that the unions raised. And that government called us, demonstrated that such peculiarities were captured, and that we saw that there was no reason for us to reject if actually what we are doing is to ensure that the system operates, seamless. And after queuing in, agreeing with government, ASU actually from day one up initial rejected. And still, until today, I am not aware if they have changed their position. But we realized that what we even were told and what we were shown was just a deception, because still our members are still having these problems. Because I can tell you that there are members of ours who still do not have access to their salaries. Or some that have still continue to get mutilated salaries. I give you an example.
Yes.
Our medical workers have had all their allowances withdrawn. Shift, call duty, and so on and so forth. They do not access. And then even some of our people who do, other jobs, outside their regular primary assignments.
Well, ASU's battle was that as a university system, they should be able to have their own autonomous payment systems, that they will come up with theirs. Now, that battle was what they were on consistently for the last 8 to how many months or so before they eventually called off the strike. Since they have won that particular battle, shouldn't that already answer the question for IPIS? Would you be going with the autonomous system created for universities by, say, ASU and allied bodies? I
do not know what ASU is presenting as a solution to it, but I can tell you also that we also have a solution on the table, because salaries or payment of salaries, preparation up to payment is clearly the job of the non-teaching staff.
Okay.
And the people that do it are those in the bursary departments, and that in conjunction with our experts in the ICT. So who can provide a better solution than the non-teaching staff? And this, I tell you, that we have also floated something we call U4Ps, university payment solution that will pay and would have captured all the peculiarities in the system, where we will soon present to government, and we believe that government will listen. And if at all it is the name that they do not want, what we are saying is that take a better solution, which we are presenting, if you like, to work on IPIS, because IPIS has failed so far.
Lagos now, and take a question from Chamberlain.
Well, Ms. I'm just wondering, now that you talked about IPIS, you say IPIS was okay until a certain time, but ASU came up with UTAS. Would it be a good idea if ASU or if UTAS accommodated SANU and NASU, or you prefer government to just follow the payment system that you have come up with? And isn't that going to have two separate payment systems that might be wieldy to manage?
Chamberlain, I think these problems are self-induced because government is the owner of the universities. We are all employees. And that if every facet of the university is bringing a solution, what the government needs to do is to listen. Take the one of, like I said, I cannot be able to talk about what ASU is giving, but I can also tell you that we have assembled professionals who have come up with good solutions. And because if really what you want is to ensure that we do not have problem with your members of staff by paying them salaries as at when due, and without mutilation, without really denying others what they should get, they need to bring these professionals together. Look at where IPs is deficient. If they want to borrow from our technology or from what we have given as a solution, so be it. We are not saying that there is a hard and fast rule about the fact that ours must be the one. But for now, what we have seen, IPs has failed. We do not know about what ASU is giving, but what we have presented or what we are going to present to government will be the solution to the problem.
Well, we have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. We want to be as optimistic as you are, that the federal government is listening and that they will do something before you eventually go or down tools February 5th, as you have said you will, if nothing is done. But we hope that something is done. Mohammed Ibrahim is the national president of SANU, that's the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us in our studios this morning.
Nice being here.
Well, just before we go, there is no way we'll leave without taking some of your comments and tweets. We'll take this one from Sam was born on Oyo insecurity, says, the quick solution to the Oyo security issue is for the president. He is very clear, or she is very clear, not presidency, to address the nation, assuring all citizens of their security. Also, direct the security agencies to go after all bandits and kidnappers wholeheartedly. Oh, that's from Sam was born.
Well, it says it's Chancellor, and it says the events in Oyo and Ondo raises much fears. It's about time the PMB administration insists on doing the right thing, and that is ranching.
Interesting. On restructuring, Ruth Madden says, do Nigerians trust the country's voting system enough to use this method to determine which path to take for the future? Will the process be free of rigging?
And Silfan says, NAS cannot discuss and arrive on a consensus on issue of restructuring. NAS is lopsided, a foundational fault of the forced constitution of 1999. It is Nigerians, #Nigerians, that will birth a constitution which will convoke a true NAS Nigeria that represents Nigerians.
Like you say, failure of any system has a lot of factors. The problem is not all the people running the system. It is the system. It was created so that you can't identify or fix the problems, but manage it only. The first step to fixing the system is to rip down the Constitution. Oh dear, there you go. Wow, what a scenario. How is that going to play out? Well, there you go. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and have a wonderful day.
Well, at least people are speaking. Please keep talking. It's better to Jojo than to Wowo. Thank you. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.